My 5-year battle against the disease without a name. Imagine your body turning against you in ways no textbook can explain, while doctor after doctor shakes their head in baffled frustration. That was my reality, trapped in a glittering prison of escalating agony, dismissed as complicated or anxious, while an invisible enemy systematically dismantled my life. This is the story of my 5-year odyssey through medical purgatory, a fight not just for survival, but for the simple dignity of a name for the monster devouring me from within. The descent. When normalcy shattered, it started subtly, almost insultingly so. A persistent fatigue that coffee couldn't touch, a dull ache behind my eyes that lingered long after deadlines were met. I was 28, fit, with a demanding but rewarding career in graphic design, a vibrant social life, and a future painted in bright, optimistic strokes. I dismissed it as burnout, the inevitable tax of modern life. But the fatigue deepened, morphing from tiredness into a leaden exhaustion that made climbing a flight of stairs feel like scaling Everest. Then came the nausea, not the fleeting kind, but a constant, churning companion that turned the sight and smell of most foods into a source of dread. Weight began to melt off my frame, initially a curious side effect, then a terrifying trend. Within months, the landscape shifted dramatically. Searing joint pain erupted, knees, wrists, fingers, fiery and unpredictable, making simple tasks like typing or opening a jar excruciating. My skin, once clear, became a battleground. Angry red rashes bloomed unpredictably, sensitive to touch, light, even the fabric of my clothes. Migraines descended like violent storms, leaving me incapacitated in darkened rooms for days. The nausea escalated into violent, uncontrollable vomiting spells that left me trembling and weak. My digestive system became a traitor. Unpredictable bouts of debilitating diarrhea alternated with painful constipation. Sleep became a fragmented illusion, shattered by pain, chills, and night sweats that soaked the sheets. The vibrant, independent life I knew evaporated. Work became impossible. Social engagements were cancelled, one by one, replaced by hospital visits and a growing pile of unanswered texts. The active hobbies I loved, hiking, cycling, even long walks, faded into distant memories. I became a prisoner in my own failing body, watching the world move on through a thickening pane of glass. The labyrinth, seeking answers in a maze of uncertainty. My first port of call was my primary care physician. Concerned, she ran standard blood panels. Results came back, mostly normal, save for slightly elevated inflammatory markers. Probably a virus, she suggested, or maybe stress. Give it time. Time passed. I worsened. Thus began the bewildering, soul-crushing journey through the fragmented world of medical specialization, a journey that would span 5 years and involve 17 different specialists. Rheumatologist, tested for lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome. Extensive panels for autoimmune markers. Results, inconclusive. Your symptoms don't fit neatly into any classic autoimmune box. Maybe fibromyalgia? But the vomiting, the rashes, the escalating neurological symptoms didn't fit. Gastroenterologist, endoscopy, colonoscopy, breath tests, stool analyses galore. Ruled out Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, major infections. Diagnosed with IBS. A frustratingly vague label that felt like a dismissal of the systemic horror I was experiencing. Medications for nausea and motility offered fleeting, minimal relief. Neurologist, brain MRI, nerve conduction studies. Ruled out MS, major tumors. Migraines were confirmed, but their origin remained mysterious. Complex migraines, they said, prescribing stronger abortives and preventatives that barely touched the pain. The cognitive fog, the brain fog, worsened, making concentration and memory feel like wading through tar. Asterisk dermatologist, biopsied the rashes. Results, nonspecific dermatitis. Possible allergic reaction? but extensive allergy testing revealed no clear triggers. Topical steroids offered temporary surface calm but did nothing for the internal storm. Infectious disease specialists tested for Lyme disease multiple times, different labs, parasitic infections, rare tropical diseases I had zero exposure to. All negative. We're just not finding an infectious cause. Endocrinologist, thyroid, adrenal function, hormone panels. Mostly within range. Not endocrine related. Psychiatrist, this was perhaps the most devastating referral. As my physical health deteriorated and the answers remained elusive, the suggestion that it might be all in my head gained traction. Severe anxiety manifesting somatically, conversion disorder, health anxiety disorder. These terms were bandied about, sometimes explicitly, often implied. I was anxious, terrified in fact, but I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the anxiety was a consequence, not the cause. Fighting this perception became an exhausting battle in itself, layered on top of the physical suffering. Therapy helped me cope with the trauma, but it didn't stop the vomiting or the pain. Each specialist operated within their silo, examining their fragment of the puzzle. My symptoms, however, refused to stay confined. They bled across specialties, defying categorization. I became a medical curiosity, a fascinating case, discussed in hushed tones during rounds, but ultimately, an unsolved mystery. I carried binders thick with test results, hundreds of pages documenting my body's betrayal, yet containing no answers. The phrase, idiopathic, meaning, of unknown cause, became a haunting refrain on my medical records. It felt like a synonym for hopeless. The isolation, life in the Shadowlands, the physical toll was immense, but the psychological and social isolation was its own unique torture. The erosion of self. Who was I without my health, my career, my energy? The vibrant, creative, social person I identified as was buried under layers of pain, fatigue, and fear. Grieving my former self was a constant, aching process. The strain on relationships. Some friends and family were incredible pillars of support. Others drifted away, unable to comprehend an illness with no name, no prognosis, no end in sight. Relationships became strained by constant cancellations, my inability to participate, and the sheer emotional weight of my situation. Partners faced the impossible burden of caregiver and witnessed to relentless suffering. The guilt I felt was crushing. Financial ruin, medical bills piled up despite insurance. Specialist copays, expensive tests not fully covered, medications, lost income from inability to work. It was a relentless financial hemorrhage. Savings evaporated. Debt mounted. The stress of financial collapse added another suffocating layer to the nightmare. The dismissal. The most corrosive element was the pervasive sense of not being believed. When tests come back normal, the burden of proof shifts insidiously onto the patient. Eyebrows raised when I described the intensity of my symptoms. Suggestions to try yoga, eat healthier, or think more positively felt like cruel jokes. The implication that I was exaggerating, seeking attention, or worse, fabricating it all, was a constant, silent accusation that chipped away at my sanity and self-worth. Medical gaslighting is a real and devastating trauma. The abyss of uncertainty. Living without a diagnosis is living in a terrifying limbo. How serious is it? Is it progressive? Is it terminal? What treatments might help? What does the future hold? The lack of a framework, a name, a prognosis, meant living perpetually braced for the next, worst symptom, with no light at the end of the tunnel. Hope became a scarce and fragile commodity that I spent days curled in the fetal position, overwhelmed by pain and despair. I mourned the life I lost and feared I might never get back. The loneliness of being medically unexplained is profound. You feel like a ghost haunting the edges of the healthcare system, visible yet unseen, speaking yet unheard. The turning point, becoming my own advocate and the glimmer of a clue. By year 4, I was a shadow of myself. Wheelchair-dependent for outings, reliant on liquid nutrition supplements, my world shrunk to the confines of my home and the circuit of doctor's appointments. Despair was a constant companion, but beneath it, a fierce, stubborn ember of defiance still burned. I refused to accept that this was simply my fate. I realized the fragmented specialist approach wasn't working. I needed someone willing to look at the whole picture, to connect the disparate dots. I began deep, relentless research. I spent hours in online medical journals. PubMed became my grim companion, patient forums for rare diseases, finding eerie echoes of my symptoms in others' stories, and advocacy group websites. I learned about complex systemic disorders, dysautonomia, mast cell activation syndromes, rare autoimmune conditions, and genetic metabolic disorders. I compiled a meticulous timeline of my symptoms, their progression, triggers I suspected, and treatments tried and failed. I organized my mountain of test results into a coherent narrative. Armed with this dossier, I sought out a renowned internist at a major university medical center, known for tackling diagnostic mysteries. Getting an appointment took months and significant effort. Walking, or rather, being wheeled, into Dr. Eris Thorne's office felt like a last resort. Dr. Thorne was different. He listened. Not just to my current symptoms, but to the entire 4-year saga. He pored over my meticulously organized binders, asking probing questions, looking for patterns others had missed. He didn't dismiss my research, he engaged with it. "You know your body better than anyone," he said, a simple statement that felt like the first validation I'd received in years. He ordered a new battery of tests, but with a different focus, guided by the constellation of symptoms: the systemic inflammation, the rashes, the GI havoc, the neurological involvement, the profound fatigue. He looked beyond the standard panels. One test result stood out: an extremely elevated level of a specific cytokine, a cell-signaling protein involved in inflammation, that wasn't routinely checked. It was abnormally high, pointing towards a hyperinflammatory state, but not specific to any one known disease. Another test showed subtle abnormalities in my bone marrow function, again not diagnostic, but another piece of the puzzle. Dr. Thorne didn't have an answer yet, but he had a direction. "This isn't in your head," he stated firmly. "There is a significant, systemic inflammatory process happening. It doesn't fit a common diagnosis, which means we might be dealing with something very rare, possibly even novel, or a very unusual presentation of a known rare disease." For the first time, a doctor acknowledged the scale of the mystery without dismissing me. The key moment came when he suggested a deeper dive, a comprehensive biopsy, not just of skin or GI tissue, but targeting an area showing subtle changes on a specialized skin, my bone marrow and a small lymph node. "It's invasive," he cautioned, "but given the progression and the lack of answers, it might be our best shot at seeing the pathology directly." The revelation, a name, at last. The biopsy procedures were grueling. The bone marrow biopsy, in particular, was deeply unpleasant. But the fire of hope, however faint, propelled me forward. The wait for results was agonizing, weeks stretched into an eternity filled with the familiar dread of another, inconclusive, or normal. Then the call came. Dr. Thorne's voice was calm but held an undercurrent of urgency. "We need you to come in. We have results." Sitting in his office, my heart hammered against my ribs, my partner gripping my hand tightly. Dr. Thorne pulled up the pathology report on his screen. "The biopsy shows a significant, abnormal proliferation of histiocytes," he began. Histiocytes? I'd vaguely encountered the term in my research, but it wasn't a disease I knew. He explained, histiocytes are immune cells normally involved in cleaning up cellular debris and fighting infection. In my bone marrow and lymph node, however, they were present in vast, abnormal numbers, clustered in damaging ways, and showing unusual characteristics. Accompanying this was evidence of significant, chronic inflammation and tissue damage consistent with my symptoms. This, Dr. Thorne said, pointing to the screen, fits a spectrum of rare disorders called histiocytic disorders. Specifically, given the cell morphology, the tissue involvement, and your systemic symptoms, this aligns most closely with a very rare condition called Erdheim-Chester Disease, ECD. Erdheim-Chester Disease. The words hung in the air. After 5 years of terrifying anonymity, the monster had a name. He explained. ECD is an ultra-rare non-Langerhans cell histiocytosis. It involves the excessive production and infiltration of specific histiocytes, foamy histiocytes, into various tissues and organs, bones, often causing pain, the retroperitoneum, causing abdominal issues, lungs, skin, the central nervous system, explaining headaches, cognitive fog, and more. It's systemic, inflammatory, and its presentation is notoriously variable, which explained why it evaded diagnosis for so long. It fit my constellation of symptoms: the bone pain, which had worsened significantly in my long bones, the GI distress, the rashes, the fatigue, the neurological symptoms, the weight loss, the systemic inflammation. The relief of having a name was instantaneous and overwhelming. Tears streamed down my face, tears of validation, of release from the crushing weight of uncertainty. It was real. It had a name. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making it up. The years of being dismissed, doubted, and gaslit washed over me, but were momentarily swept aside by this profound vindication. Yet, the relief was swiftly tempered by the gravity of the diagnosis. ECD is serious. It's progressive, potentially life-threatening if it affects critical organs like the heart, lungs, or brain. It's chronic. There is no cure. The battle reshaped, treatment and learning to live again. A diagnosis wasn't a finish line. It was the start of a different, equally challenging phase: treatment. ECD is so rare that treatment protocols are evolving, often based on small case studies and expert consensus. Dr. Thorne referred me to one of the few national specialists in histiocytic disorders. Confirmation involved further targeted imaging, a full-body PET-CT scan and specific MRI sequences. The results were stark: evidence of histiocytic infiltration in my long bones, femurs, tibias, subtle involvement in the retroperitoneal space, explaining abdominal pain and GI issues, and concerning activity around the base of my skull/pituitary region, likely contributing to headaches and hormonal fluctuations. It was widespread, confirming the ECD diagnosis definitively. The treatment plan was aggressive, reflecting the disease's severity. The frontline therapy for systemic ECD like mine is targeted therapy, BRAF inhibitors if a specific mutation is present. Mine wasn't, or more commonly, interferon alpha, a powerful immune modulator. Interferon alpha is notorious for its brutal side effects: flu-like symptoms, fever, chills, bone-deep aches, crushing fatigue, depression, hair loss, and more. It felt like trading one set of horrors for another, but this time, it was a calculated trade, a fight with a known enemy. Starting interferon was like stepping back into the worst days of my illness, amplified. The injections induced high fevers, violent chills, and profound exhaustion. My already fragile body was pushed to its limits. It was a terrifying leap of faith, trusting that this poison might also be my lifeline. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, over months, something shifted. The constant, searing bone pain began to lessen. Not disappear, but recede from a roar to a more manageable ache. The violent vomiting spells became less frequent. The debilitating migraines reduced in intensity and occurrence. The cognitive fog, while still present, started to lift slightly, allowing for moments of clearer thought. Follow-up PET scans showed a reduction in metabolic activity. The disease was responding. It wasn't a miracle cure. The side effects were brutal and persistent. Fatigue remained a dominant force. I still had bad days, even bad weeks. But crucially, the terrifying progression seemed halted. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't getting inexorably worse. I was holding a line, and sometimes even gaining a little ground. Treatment became my new normal: daily injections, constant management of side effects, regular scans and blood work. But within this new framework, life began to cautiously reemerge. With reduced pain and nausea, I could tolerate more food, gaining back some precious weight. I could sit at a computer for short periods, tentatively reconnecting with my design skills. I could have short, meaningful visits with friends without being completely wiped out for days afterward. I graduated from the wheelchair to a walker, then, on good days, to a cane. The simple act of walking unaided across a room felt like a monumental victory. The aftermath, scars, strength, and a changed world. 5 years after the first whispers of fatigue, I stand on the other side of the diagnostic abyss. The battle isn't over. ECD is a chronic condition. I will likely be on some form of treatment, facing scans and uncertainties, for the rest of my life. The physical and emotional scars run deep. The physical toll: my body bears the marks, the lingering fatigue, the vulnerability to infections from immunosuppressive treatment, the bone damage visible on scans, the neurological quirks that remain. I have to pace myself relentlessly, listening to my body with an acuity forged in the crucible of illness. The psychological scars, the trauma of the diagnostic odyssey, the medical gaslighting, the isolation, and the constant confrontation with mortality leave indelible marks. Anxiety about relapse or progression is a constant hum in the background. Trusting my body, and sometimes trusting the medical system, is an ongoing process. The fear of returning to that nameless void never fully disappears. The altered perspective, yet, surviving the unimaginable, reshapes your world. I possess a profound appreciation for the smallest moments of wellness: a pain-free hour, enjoying a meal, sunlight on my face, a genuine laugh. My priorities are irrevocably clear: health, authentic connection, purpose. The trivialities that once caused stress now seem laughably insignificant. I have a ferocious resilience I never knew I possessed, forged in the fire of relentless suffering, finding purpose in the pain. My experience ignited a fierce passion for rare disease advocacy. I connect with others lost in the diagnostic wilderness, offering validation, resources, and the hard-won knowledge that they are not alone and they are not crazy. I share my story to raise awareness among both the public and medical professionals about the devastating impact of diagnostic delay and the critical need to listen to patients, especially those with complex, unexplained symptoms. I support research into histiocytic disorders, desperate for better treatments and, one day, a cure. Lessons from the abyss: what my nameless battle taught me. This 5-year war against an invisible, unnamed enemy taught me brutal, invaluable lessons. 1. Trust your body. You are the ultimate expert on your own experience. If something feels profoundly wrong, even if tests are normal, persist. Your intuition is a powerful diagnostic tool. 2. Become your own CEO. In complex or rare disease, passivity is not an option. Research meticulously, organize your records, ask relentless questions, challenge assumptions, and seek second, third, fourth opinions. You are the commander of your care team. 3. The devastating power of unexplained. Living without a diagnosis is a unique and profound trauma. The medical system needs better pathways, more integrated approaches, and far greater humility in the face of the unknown. Dismissal and gaslighting inflict deep wounds. 4. Resilience is forged, not given. Strength isn't the absence of fear or pain. It's the determination to keep going through it, one excruciating step at a time, even when all hope seems lost. You discover depths of courage you never imagined. 5. The lifeline of community. Finding others who understand the specific hell you're in, whether through online groups or rare disease organizations, is invaluable. Shared experience combats isolation and provides practical wisdom and emotional sustenance. 6. The imperative of advocacy. For rare disease patients, silence equals invisibility. Sharing our stories, demanding research, and educating the medical community are essential to improving outcomes for those who come after us. 7. Redefining. Living a meaningful life isn't contingent on perfect health or the absence of struggle. It's about finding purpose, connection, and moments of joy within the constraints you have. It's about adapting, not surrendering. Epilogue. Living beyond survival. Today, I am not cured. I am in remission, tethered to treatment, forever marked by Erdheim-Chester disease. But I am living. The 5-year battle against the nameless monster took almost everything from me: my health, my career, my savings, my innocence about the world. But it couldn't take my spirit. It couldn't extinguish the stubborn ember of hope that finally led to the name that unlocked the door to treatment. The disease had a name all along. Medicine just took 5 agonizing years to discover it. My battle underscored a terrifying truth: you can be desperately, profoundly ill in a world of advanced medicine and still be invisible. But it also revealed the extraordinary power of the human spirit to endure the unimaginable, to fight for recognition, and to rebuild a life, piece by fragile piece, even in the shadow of a rare and relentless disease. I survived the nameless years. Now I live, fiercely, gratefully, purposefully, with a name, and on my own terms. The invisible chains are loosened, and though I may always feel their weight, they no longer define my entire existence. I am a survivor, an advocate, a testament to the brutal, beautiful resilience of the human body and spirit in the face of the unknown. The battle changed me irrevocably, but it did not break me. And in that unbroken core, I found my true strength.